Good
Hello,
morning,
hello.
Margaret.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for joining me for this Tuesday talk. We've got a jam-packed agenda here. I want to cover some housekeeping items first before we get started. We've got some live attendees here. For those of you that are listening live, we love when there is participation from the audience. So you do have the ability to type in a question. Depending on how Zoom is set up on your computer, if you hover near the top or bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. If you click on that, you can type in a question anytime over the course of the next half hour. I've got that window open, so I will see when the question pops up. If you want to make your question anonymous, you certainly can. You can click that button to make the question anonymous. And I'll make sure to ask the question over the course of the next 30 minutes, and Margaret will get it answered. Okay, and I do encourage questions. I feel like this conversation is much more impactful. It goes smoother when there are questions. We love questions. Okay, as long as they're related to what we're talking about. Okay, so introductions. My name is Jen Chaney. I'm the Vice President of Franchise Development for Right at Home. Joining me today, I have Margaret Haynes. She is our CEO of Right at Home. I feel like we have a lot to talk about. There are a lot of things that have happened here at Right at Home since we last spoke. I think we took a hiatus a couple weeks ago. So the last time we did visit was a month ago, which you and I both know, Margaret, a lot really has happened over the course of the past month. So just to kind of set paint a picture for our listeners, we have been working a lot on strategy, strategic planning. You can't be the CEO of Right at Home with just thinking about the right here, right now. So Margaret is thinking a lot about the future. And her style is she gets feedback from everyone. And that's one thing that I really do love about you, Margaret. And our franchise owners do as well. So let's talk a little bit about that and paint the picture for our listeners. What really all goes into strategy and these strategic planning sessions. I know we've had several different ways that you're getting feedback from our franchise owners, from external partners, from the internal staff members, from the executive team, the Strategic Leadership Council. I know I've just thrown a ton of things at you. So in your words, why don't you just describe to our listeners what that means and what that looks like?
Yeah, I love talking about strategy, and it's really important. It's not a one and done kind of thing. I mean, we need to constantly be thinking about where is the industry going, what is changing in our world, changing within the franchise system, the challenges that our franchisees might be facing, or the opportunities that are in front of them, and how do we continue to stay nimble and responsive. But like any good company, you have to at least have a plan, right? And so you need to be thinking about a strategic view. And so embarking on this, when I came into the role in April officially, we really started an entire process. And so it really began with listening sessions. So the listening session, and we spent about 3 weeks just doing listening sessions. And we broke it down into different stakeholder groups. And the purpose really was truly to listen, right? So we had some set thought-provoking questions around where each stakeholder group kind of sees the future. What do they see changing? So we started first with the internal staff. And so we did listening sessions, several of them with different groups across different departments of just how do we see the industry changing as we think about the aging processes. We are engaging with our franchise owners on a daily basis. What are we hearing, and what does the future look like from our eyes? Mm-hmm. And that was a great opportunity for individuals all across the corporate office, not just leadership, but really everybody that plays a role here in the corporate team. Yep. And then we did the same thing with our franchise owners. So we went to the network and said, we want to hear from you. So we did, I think like 8 different listening sessions across the franchise system. And so we posed the question ahead of time so they knew what we were expecting, but then we brought small groups together that then could talk out loud, build on each other's feedback and ideas. And we sat back and listened and had several scribes in each session to make sure we captured the great insight that was coming from the franchise network. Then the third group that we went to, the third kind of stakeholder group, was really external partners, external experts that are just in healthcare in general, not specific to the Right at Home brand. We even went to our original founder, Allen Hager, and spent time with him, seeking his input just from his perspective, what he's seen since starting the company back in 95, and now having stepped away and thinking broader about different things as he's doing different areas of interest. And we also brought in a gerontologist and talked to a gerontologist about, from their perspective, what they see from an aging process, and how can we best kind of think about this whole aging continuum, healthcare continuum, and what's happening in healthcare, and what does that ultimately mean for the Right at Home brand. So those listening sessions culminated in a ton of information that gave us great insight into what different groups see as top of mind. We also infused research. So we have done some consumer research through a third party. We also infused feedback channels that we have on a regular basis through the franchise network that gives us additional input. And then we specifically then moved into the next phase after listening, which was really called visioning sessions.
Yep.
And the visioning sessions are understanding all the data that came in, but now getting more specific array. Okay, how could we solve certain challenges that the industry is faced with, or opportunities that we see coming for the industry? And what might that look like? So again, thinking really big with no constraints around resources and whatnot. It's like, let's think big, and then we can kindly start to come in and hone that into what really is a strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so listening sessions fed the visioning sessions, which we did those with our Strategic Leadership Council. You mentioned the SLC.
Yep.
And that's a council that's made up of franchise owners across all the regions. And that was a great, we brought them all to Omaha, and we had a great session with them in terms of, we brought in also a third-party facilitator to really help us make sure that we were staying focused on the opportunities that are out there. And then we did another big visioning session with the leadership group, taking all of that information in to ultimately develop what is a strategic roadmap. And we think about strategy 3 years out. We kind of set a big audacious goal out there. We think about 5 years out, but really in our industry, as fast as things are changing, 5 years is like completely blur. And even 3 years, we know that what we set today as a vision of where we want to go is likely going to change as we start our way there. But at least now we know directionally where we want to head. And it's such an exciting time to be a part of this industry.
Yes, absolutely. So a couple things that you said that I want to reinforce to our listeners, which is a frequently asked question that we get. Once I become a franchise owner, how is my voice heard? Because franchise owners are the ones that are working this business day in and day out. I mean, they know what's going on out there in the real world. It's not just an executive team here making decisions. Here's what you need to do. So I just want to reinforce that this is one of the multiple ways that we get feedback from our franchise owners. So kind of the progression, the internal staff, feedback from our franchise owners, which I was part of the one of the visioning sessions. And it was fantastic to see, okay, so here's what our franchise owners are saying is happening out there in their businesses, real life, real time. We have to consider these things as we're thinking about the future. So I don't know how other franchises do it, but that's something that I'm really proud of here at Right at Home, is actually listening to our franchise owners on what is happening, taking that into consideration as we think about the future and what the plan is for the future. So I just want to reinforce that to our listeners. Okay, so where do we go from here? So if we put together, when we have this plan finalized, because I'm working on it with you as well as some other team leaders here and executive team. So what happens? What happens when, okay, so we've got a plan. What does that look like? And how do we measure the success of that plan? And how do we let our franchise owners know, okay, this is the plan? What happens after that?
Yeah, so there is obviously a lot of work that goes into taking these big visions and bringing them into, okay, now what are we going to accomplish in the next 12 to 18 months? What are we going to accomplish in the next quarter? And so we start to take these big goals and break them down into sizable elements that we can actually do something on and we can action on. The beautiful thing with the franchise system, and what I love about what you just talked about, how we get the feedback from the franchisees and engage them, is that we, along with that strategic leadership council, we will be setting goals and objectives with them 12 to 18 months of what are the things we want to move that are directly in line with our strategy. So we're right now in the midst of taking these things that we've identified of where we need to go as a system and starting to flesh it out a little bit more, understanding, okay, what is going to be the investment in time, money, and energy that we need to make in order to move these forward. And to your point, how are we going to know that we are moving the needle, and how are we going to know that we're making progress? So we're also in the process of building out those key performance indicators. What are those metrics that we can hold ourselves accountable to, that we can share with the franchise system, and they can understand and go along this journey with us as we progress through the strategy. And then that's the fun part of it, right? Because then you have to have metrics. You have to know how you're progressing, because quite frankly, we recognize there could be a strategic direction we're heading down, or something we want to try from an innovation perspective, and maybe it doesn't deliver what we were hoping it would deliver as we set our metrics on the onset. That's a wonderful thing, right? To know, is it working or not? Because then we can pivot as needed in order to be nimble. And that's part of innovation, right? That's part of continuing to grow and continuing to evolve the system. But yeah, so we will be doing town halls with the network and explaining and laying out the full strategy every year at our annual meeting. I love getting up and talking with the network about what is our strategy and what have we accomplished and where are we going. And then we'll also continue just through communications through the Strategic Leadership Council, making sure that we are continuing to get feedback. And we also use a lot of pilots. We use a lot of task force or subcommittees, all of which are made up of representatives coming from the franchise network, as well as someone here at the corporate office that can keep the ball rolling with the team. So it's strategy is a fun thing. And I think it has served us well over the last 22 years that we've been franchising. And it's going to serve us well for the next 22 years and beyond, because there's so much opportunity out there.
Yes. So a kind of a behind the scenes look to our listeners. It's one thing to put together a strategy, and it's another thing to actually execute that strategy. So look, just kind of a peek behind the curtain. I can confess I'm working very hard on the things that I have been chosen as the champion for strategic planning, as well as the rest of the team here. So that's something that we are currently in the thick of right now. We are working very hard to execute that strategy and to do that for our franchise owners and for the future of Right at Home. So couple questions have come in as we have been talking. Question number one here, and this is a question you've been asked before. It says here, and I'm going to read it word for word. I'm very concerned about caregiver availability. What is the strategic plan around that issue?
Yeah, so, I wish that there was one single answer saying, well, if you just did this, then the caregiver issue would just poof, go away. But we know that that's not reality, right? We know that even just the demographics that we are faced with and we're moving into as a country and as a society and as a world, we know there's going to be way more individuals that could benefit and want to take advantage of the services provided by Right at Home. But there's not an equal boom of individuals behind the baby boomer generation, equal size in terms of workers. So we know that there's a challenge with even, we have some caregivers that work across the network that are baby boomers or are, part of the, they may be 75, 80 years old, but still in great health, and they're out there helping, their fellow, individual age gracefully wherever they call home. But we know that we're always going to have this challenge of caregivers, and it's not anything new. We've always said from the time we started the company and the business model, you constantly have to be hiring, and you constantly have to be out there and engaging with the local community to identify individuals that'll take advantage and want to use the services of Right at Home.
Yep.
So knowing that there's not one single silver bullet tied to this whole caregiver initiative and the challenges there, we are firing on all cylinders because we know that we need to create an environment where we can attract a lot of caregivers. So we're focusing on ways to tap into pools of caregivers, bringing those applicants in. We're helping all of the franchise owners think about the individual, we call them micro experiences along that journey that a caregiver will go through from the minute they get engaged with the Right at Home brand to then coming into orientation, to going to that first shift, to then staying with the company ongoing. So we're thinking not only about bringing in applicants, getting them hired, getting them trained, but really how to retain those caregivers as well and not have some turnover. And you're always going to have some turnover, but we also look at what is that longevity? What is how long are those caregivers staying beyond that initial 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? And how can you give a career path to that caregiver that gives them an opportunity? Because like any individual, you want to continue to grow and progress in whatever profession you choose. And so we work on all those elements that come around caregiver. Aside from that, we also recognize with it not being enough caregivers, part of our strategy is looking at, okay, and so how can we come alongside the caregiver and supplement with some other products, services, technologies, those sort of things that will either help support that client when the caregiver is not there from maybe a remote check-in perspective or those types of things from the technology, but also how can we bring technology in while the caregiver is there and maybe help with the overall experience? And how do we leverage technology just in the operations of it all to drive efficiency and how caregivers are being assigned or getting their cases and those sort of things. So it's again an exciting time because there's so many opportunities to continue to make things even better, not only for the client, but for the care staff that are the angels that are out there doing that work every day.
Absolutely. And I can add on to that. I believe you mentioned the town hall meetings that we have. We have those every other Tuesday. We do have a town hall meeting this afternoon. So it's a time for all of our franchise owners to dial into a Zoom call where there's a specific agenda. Margaret, I don't think that there has been an agenda yet that I have seen that doesn't include something as it pertains to caregiver recruitment and retention. So there's an entire staff of people here, but that's all that they do is help our franchise owners with that. And we're constantly thinking of new and creative ways to help our franchise owners with caregiver recruitment and retention. So it's always top of mind here. And something that we regularly communicate with our franchise owners, not only the town hall, but we also have other avenues that we communicate this with our franchise owners as well. So
absolutely.
2 more questions have come in.
Okay.
I'll read the one at the top here, word for word. The metrics being gathered and reviewed, are those just for internal use in the system? Or how do those metrics play a part in the home care space / industry?
Yeah, really great question. So obviously the metrics, we have lots of different KPIs that we're tracking. And we actually invested heavily many years ago, recognizing, data is just so important, but data in and of itself, if you don't extract the intelligence, the story that it's telling you, it's just numbers, it's just data. So we, from an internal perspective, to help our franchise owners, obviously the goal that we exist, why we're here is to help them build sustainable, profitable businesses. So recognizing that we want to make it easy for a business owner to gauge the health of their business, we invested in a system and capturing data in a way that now presents a dashboard. We call it RightFocus, but a way in which each individual franchise owner can dive into their data, do that with their business performance coach as well, and really understand what's going on in their world, their particular business, and what are the levers or things that they can pull to continue to grow their business and increase the overall health of it, the profitability of their business. All that data that we capture also becomes helpful as we think about the broader industry. So as we go out and start to make partnerships with national providers or even regional providers. A lot of what they ask for is, okay, well, what's the data? What are you doing to help with preventing readmissions into the hospital? So there's things like change of condition that is tracked in a software that allows us to say, well, here are the things that we're monitoring in ways in which we're really helping that individual stay in their home, remain healthy in their home, and not having to revert back to an institutional type setting. Also, just making sure that they have the supporting elements around them. So are they following their medication? So the medication reminders that are out there are things that are tracked to say, okay, the caregiver checked off these particular things that are part of the care plan being delivered. So data is something that is going to continue to be extremely valuable, not only for our industry, but the healthcare world in general, as we continue to try to look at the social determinants of health and how do we continue to help people age in a way that minimizes the stress on our healthcare system.
Yep. And one thing I want to reinforce to the people that are listening, if you become a franchise owner, you are going to have a RightFocus dashboard that is solely yours for your business, that has all of the metrics that you would normally pull from this website and this software and this place. It's all in one spot that measures the health and the metrics of your business. So you can constantly watch the metrics of your business. That's something that we do ourselves and we do for our franchise owners. And it makes it incredibly easy for you as a franchise owner to watch those things that are important to, and I'm going to quote you, to help build a sustainable, profitable business. Okay. All right. 2 more questions. We're running out of time here. So I'll read this next one, which I love this question, by the way. Not that I didn't love the other questions, but I especially like this one. What do you hear most often is the most rewarding part of being a Right at Home franchise owner? Why did you decide to join Right at Home? And if for the person who typed this question, if you can clarify, are you asking specifically for Margaret or generally our franchise owners, why they decide to join Right at Home? So if you can clarify that, that would be great. I want to make sure that your question is answered. So it says here, why did you decide to join Right at Home? How has this job changed your life?
Wow. Okay, so let me start with the first part in terms of, what's the one reason why, franchise owners come into this industry? And I really, I think anybody who comes into home care, it's because they have either a story that led them here, they've gone through an experience with maybe a loved one, a parent, that they saw the need of being able to bring in supportive services around their loved one and the impact that can have. So I would say across the industry and across Right at Home in particular, you just see in the eyes of our franchise owners, their passion around our mission. And when we say improve the quality of life for those we serve, it's not just the clients. Absolutely, we want the clients to age gracefully wherever they call home, and how can we support that? But it's also the families, it's the families that are there when we're not there, potentially, that are carrying that family caregiver load that can be really stressful at times. So how can we support them? It's the caregivers themselves and the other employees that as a franchise owner, you get to employ, you get to help them create a career and put food on their table. And so we think about all of that as we think about improving the quality of life for those we serve. So I would say the number one thing across the franchise system is just a pure passion around the impact that this business model and brand can have on a family and their local community.
Sure. So it said specifically, but the person who typed the question is wondering why you, Margaret, and why I, Jen, decided to join Right at Home, and how has this job changed our lives?
Yeah, so I'll try to real quickly articulate kind of why, because I could talk about it for hours because I have so much passion inside of me about it. So I came to Right at Home knowing nothing about home care and nothing about franchising, quite frankly. All I knew is that I wanted to take my business background and apply it in a way in the health and human services side. And I truly feel blessed that I got aligned with Right at Home and had the opportunity to join, because I love getting up and coming to work every day. And since I've been a part of Right at Home, and I'll be finishing my 12th year this year at the end of the year, I've not only been able to be on the inside of it, right, helping business owners grow their business. So using my business background, but seeing the impact that is happening every day across, not only just in the US, but globally in the other countries that we're in, the lives that we're touching. But I also had the opportunity to be a consumer of the services. And so back in 2019, as my mom was progressing with Alzheimer's, we eventually needed to bring my mom in because me and my sisters were doing a lot of her care, and it just became too much. And it became too much for my dad. So brought in Right at Home, and there's not enough words to describe the impact that Right at Home and those caregivers had on my dad, my sisters, and my mom. And then as things progressed and we had to bring in hospice, which is part of home health, we still had to bring Right at Home alongside hospice and home health to fill in where hospice wasn't going to be. Hospice was very transactional, which is great. They would come in and say where she was in the process, but it was Right at Home that was there the full time and helped us even understanding some of the spiritual things that come with passing. And there's just not enough words. So that's my semi-quick story.
Our stories are very similar, Margaret. For me, in working in franchise development, so I work with a great team of individuals who award the Right at Home franchise opportunity to people to join the Right at Home system. And it means a lot to me to bring that experience and opportunity to entrepreneurs, a business that's rewarding in so many ways. My mother was a consumer of home care services where she lived at the time. Right at Home was not an option, but we did hire a care, which, by the way, Right at Home is now an option in that area of the United States. But at the time, we hired a caregiver to come in and care for my mother in her final stages of life. And I realized, like, this is a business. This is a franchise. This is a business that somebody owns, that they do this every day, impacting other people's lives. And it just meant so much to me to see that, and then to realize later on that I could be a part of that in a way. So, and then also the culture here at Right at Home is just outstanding. Not only here at the corporate headquarters level, but our franchise owners, and how much our franchise owners not only care for their clients, but care for their caregivers as well. It's just a great atmosphere. And I too wake up every day being excited to go to work every day. But this isn't an interview for me. I'm interviewing you, Margaret. But anyway, okay. So there is a big question. We've got 2 minutes left, and here's what I'm going to do. So it says, when I read this question, you're going to be like, okay, we could spend a full 30 minutes answering this question. The question says, what kind of ongoing support do you provide to your owners to help support their long-term success? So here's what we're going to do for this one. For our live listeners, if you're either working with Jessica or you're working with Chuck, make sure that you ask them that question. We have a ton of information that we can share with you to answer that question. I want to make sure that you work with your development director that you're working on that specific question. And then also, Margaret and I are going to visit again. We will make sure to cover this question in a future a Tuesday talk. And then even if you dial in 2 weeks from today, I do know that I am interviewing, I believe her name is Shannon Mitchell. And she's going to be talking about the onboarding process for a new franchise owner right after you join you sign your franchise agreement to before your doors are open, everything that we do to help and support you with your onboarding. And we will also cover, what happens after you get your doors open for business as well. So stay tuned. We are going to have more information to make sure that question is answered. But in the meantime, you can certainly consult with Jessica or Chuck to get that question answered. Okay. Any final parting thoughts for our listeners, Margaret?
Just, as you think about how we support our franchise owners, it really is from the minute you express an interest in learning more about what is this thing called home care and what is this brand Right at Home, to the time when you're ready to cash in your asset, whether it's passing it down to your children or selling it, leaving. We are on that journey every step of the way, and we adjust our support to meet where you're at in your journey as a business owner. And we love the opportunity to work with you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Margaret. This talk was awesome. They all are, but I particularly like this one.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Goodbye.